You're live,
It is
Chris.
now, and we are here. It was a little bit laggy on my end, but we're good now, Joe. Thank you very much. And this is the Fight IQ podcast. We have a couple of special things on this very unspectacular, unspecial card. But first, I want to say our first special thing. It's Uncle Weezy coming back, joining us, gracing us with his presence. Sean is unfortunately not feeling too well. The ravages of COVID. He should be okay. But he's taking a sick day, and Weezy has been kind enough to fill in once again, friend of the show. And then we have Joe, who is joining us for breakfast. He is actually in Sydney, going to this card. It's good to be in Sydney. Probably a good trip, but probably could have used a better card, maybe. But I'll just go right into it and say, guys, what do you actually think about this card? No holding back because you're on your trip. And Joe, we'll start with you.
First of all, thanks to DraftKings for the hookup, man. They really came through. Secondly, Sean, our good friend, this DFS sniper, has got the world's worst immune system. So I don't know what he needs to do, Weezy. You and I may need to come up with some remedies. Like we'll do some Chicago East Coast remedies that, we could put Sean on some type of vitamin regime because, man, if there is something going around, he catches it. Man, that guy has been unfortunately ill more times this year than anyone I know. So we got to get him going. Yeah, this is honestly a pretty weak card. I mean, as the UFC tends to do, and I don't know why that the UK cards tend to be so good and these Australian cards tend to be so bad. And as you can imagine, the card is top loaded with Aussie fighters, which is fine. But, there's just not a lot of great matchups. I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to Volkov Tuivasa. And God, I would love it if Strickland could just knock Izzy on his ass. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Izzy is far too good for Strickland. But other than that, I mean, there's not a lot I can really get excited about here. I just wish they would make better matchups for these, overseas cards. I mean, there's 21,000 people that are going to be going to this. You think the UFC could do a better job matchmaking?
Yeah, I mean, you would think because they try to get in all these markets, like, oh, we gotta get this market, we gotta get this market, and then they come into these places, and these cards are just so underwhelming. I don't know. Well, anyway, as I said, Weezy is here as well, the man who is always looking to do some ass shaving, and he will look to do some this week, undoubtedly. Weezy, what do you think about this card here?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, we understand that when they go to Australia, they're going to feature a lot of Australian fighters, but they just kind of missed out on a couple, right? Kai Kara France was supposed to be fighting Manel Kape here. That's a big gaping hole that's in the middle of this pay-per-view card that got taken away. And then also it was supposed to be Casey O'Neill was supposed to be fighting Viviane Araújo. So that's another, high-level local fighter that probably would have been on the pay-per-view card there, a fairly high-level women's flyweight fight. So, and whenever fights like that drop out, now you're making calls to people who are like, if they're UFC veterans, they're not taking short notice fights in Australia. You'd have to be a complete moron to get on a plane the week of a fight and go fly 14 time zones away from where you live and then fight in front of a hostile crowd. I mean, it's just, so this is what happens. But I still think that there are some fun fights. Like, I can't wait for Tyson Pedro versus Anton Turkalj. Like, I could see like a banana peel getting thrown into the cage and somebody slipping on it and it just being like a meme fight. It's going to be a really fun one. Yeah. And then some of these ones on the undercard are interesting. Young versus Miranda is interesting. Blood Diamond versus Chuck Buffalo is kind of interesting. Like Malarkey being kind of a big favorite against anybody in the UFC is interesting. And John Makdessi, I think, is probably just as good of a fighter as Jamie Malarkey, but there's a wide line there. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to breaking down this card with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit some of the ones that I want to talk about as well. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just say that if you want to try RotoWire for 10 days free. Go to www.rotowire.com/free, 10 days free trial. No credit card required. Okay, and with that, we're going to jump right in. A couple of debutantes to jerk open the curtain. It is, let's see what we got here. That's right, Kiefer Crosby at 7,800. The favorite in this matchup is Kevin Gisette at 8,400. Line on this fight, Gisette coming in at minus 160. Kiefer Crosby at plus 130. And, you know, when you have these guys, these lower level regional guys, I like to go by attributes. And to me, Crosby has the more athleticism. Crosby is maybe the more agile guy. He's maybe the better pressure fighter. Gisette's longer, maybe has a little bit more power. I think he could have some of that tall man defense going on as well. And as I say, I just kind of like the movement and the speed of Crosby a little better. So I'm going Kiefer Crosby here. I think, you know, whenever you have a matchup like this, as I say, low-level MMA, I'll tend towards the dog unless the favorite looks really interesting to me. And then I'll save my money and I'll go elsewhere. But that's just the way I'm looking at this. First fight up, we will start with our guest of honor. So, Weez, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I watched the tape on these guys. You know, Crosby's all right. You know, he's fought in some reputable organizations and gotten some good results, gotten some good-looking knockouts. You know, he's fighting in Bellator, several fights in Bellator, some in Bama. So, yeah, he's been around, but, yeah, like he's losing to Karahanian, to Charlie Leary, to Mike Jackson. Not that Mike Jackson, a different Mike Jackson, but and then the wins, you know, are against, they're low-level wins, you know. The Alex Oliveira looked drunk in the cage against
He
this
did,
dude.
yeah. He was
throwing punches and missing by so much that he was falling flat on his face. It was a real embarrassing performance. So I'm not sure what to take from that. And then I watched the tape on Gisette. Holy shit, there's like an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back. My God, man. Like his fights are like watching paint dry. I mean, to think it just shows you where the UFC is at this point, where they're just kind of like making fights just to get another fight on the card. There's no thought as to like, oh, is this guy exciting or not? Does this guy have any kind of a following? His fights against Priscus Foganolo, and then there's another one that he lost by split decision against Caleb Rideout, are like affronts to MMA. They're dog shit fights. So Gisette, in my opinion, is a horrible bet at minus 155. This guy is incredibly low volume. He doesn't do anything. And if you lay that kind of juice on a fighter that really has that low of an output, you're gonna be putting your fist through the wall. So I would much rather go with Crosby. I could see him just kind of showing no respect to Gisette, getting right inside and clobbering this dude. And it looked like Gisette quit against Jack Della Maddalena. It like looked like he asked for a doctor to come into the ring in between the second and third round. He said something to the doctor. The doctor barely looked at his face and she waved the fight off. And it looked like he wanted out of there. He looked fine. But, you know, I mean, I wasn't the one getting punched in the face, so maybe he really was badly hurt, and it's Jack Della Maddalena at the end of the day. But, yeah, I did not see much from this guy Gisette that would make me think I would ever lay juice on him. So, yeah, man, I think Crosby at plus money, Crosby for a sneaky, low-owned underdog DraftKings play, the way to go for this fight.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you can say, and I think you said it well with that Oliveira fight, but at least we know he's not afraid to get into a war. He can mix it up in there, and he's not afraid to pressure. And to me, that's really enough in a fight like this against a guy like this. So I'm going Crosby as well. Joe, how are you seeing this one?
Well, I am certainly happy that Weezy and Chris took the bullet and did actual tape analysis on this fight. I would tend to see this as a pick'em, and without any of the technical expertise that you guys imparted, I am looking at this as purely a play on fighter camps. I'm looking at City Kickboxing for Giuseppe against, SGP Ireland for Crosby. And I'm going to go with the better camp, which is City Kickboxing. And for that reason and that reason alone, which is certainly, did we give the DraftKings salaries, Chris?
We did, and I don't want to start this again, Joe, but yes, we did. That was the first thing I did.
Yeah, so again, I don't like this fight. I wouldn't play it a lot on DraftKings. I would not dissuade you from taking a shot with Crosby for DraftKings, but I am going to pick, again, purely based on camps. City Kickboxing, I'm going to go with Giuseppe for that reason alone.
So if I knew that Crosby was SPG Ireland, I might have a different pick. I might have to reconsider now. I don't know, but all right, I guess I'll stay with it. As long as you know who isn't in the corner, then I'll feel a lot better about it.
Yep.
But all right, on to the next fight here. It is Shane Young, although I don't think his nickname is Sugar anymore. It is Shane Young at 8,600 taking on Gabriel Miranda at 7,600. Line on this fight: Shane Young could be had at -135. Gabriel Miranda at +114. And Shane Young is kind of one of my best examples of like a busted hype. When he first came into the UFC, I mean, okay, he had to debut against Volkanovski. Nobody expected him to win that. Okay. But then his next couple of fights, really aggressive, really high volume, just like a ferocious little pocket boxer who was always, and then he got knocked out once by, the German fighter. What is his name? Ludwig Klein. He got knocked out by Ludwig Klein. And it seemed like since then, he's just lost his mojo. Way more tentative, way less. He still throws in combinations a little bit, but way more of a counter fighter. And I just think Gabriel Miranda is very aggressive, very not into defense. But I think that can help him here. I just think he can overwhelm Shane Young. He wrestles as well. I think he can put everything together. And he's not going to stop. He's going to put a pace on him. And for that alone, I really like it. I don't think he can trust Shane Young anymore. I just don't see what he does well. I don't see really what he brings to the cage. One of those Australian fighters, right on this card, but I don't really give much credence to the hometown advantage here. I'm gonna have to go with Gabriel Miranda, and we'll go with Joe to start for this one. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah. So Shane Young is a testament to actually how good the food is out here in Australia. He completely blew weight by like 4.5 pounds. Is giving
that's right. Yes.
Is giving 30% of his purse to Miranda. Let me tell you, the food is, in all seriousness, very good out here, with the exception of Vegemite, as Nan kind of pointed out. The best way that I could describe Vegemite is using a highly quotable line from my favorite, movie Anchorman, Ron Burgundy. Vegemite is like a baby's diaper full of Indian food. And maybe then you only got it half as bad. It is vile. But other than that, yes, I do see kind of Shane Young as a busted prospect. I remember when he took on Volkanovski, I think that might have even been short notice. Even Volkanovski is like, hey, man, you did really good here. I think that fight actually, did it go to decision? I can't recall.
It did, I think, yes.
Yeah, but he's definitely a busted prospect. And and we need some value. We did not give DraftKings salaries for this fight. I know we didn't. So you want to give the DraftKings salaries, Chris?
You know what? I'll take your word for it. But it's 8,600 Shane Young, 7,600 Gabriel Miranda.
Okay. Yeah, so we need to find some value on this slate, like just to build some lineups here. And I will tell you that I really was only able to do one lineup for DraftKings because DraftKings pulled out of Australia. So the only lineup I was able to do was able to jam one in before I actually left, right? And I didn't love this card, so I didn't even reserve a lot of contests. So I do have Miranda in my lineup. Sniper got better looking. Speaking of that, I mean, the one disappointment that I had is at the weigh-ins, there was an incredibly long line to get a selfie with Nina Drama. I don't know if you guys know who Nina Drama is. No. She's the like the girl, the one that the UF former model. She does the Strickland interviews on Twitter. and the UFC actually hired her. She is like uber hot, and she does like all these videos, like she does a fitness update, which is absolutely hilarious. But like she's uber hot, like Nina Drama, and the line to just get a selfie with her was just incredible. So I hopefully I'll see her when I go out there tomorrow for the fights, because I do get like some type of VIP, photo op with fighters and stuff. So I want to get a photo with Nina Drama, but you guys got to follow her. She's hilarious. And her Sean Strickland interviews are off the cuff. Good. So anyway, Miranda, 7.6K. We need value on this card. I think this is as good a spot as any, so I'll take Miranda.
All right. And Weez, how do you see this fight here?
Yeah, I think Miranda's a great DraftKings play this week. The guy's got a 100% finish rate in 16 pro wins, 15 of them by submission, 1 of them by knockout. All but 2 of them come in the very first round. So this is a high upside guy. And then you put on top of that the line has moved significantly after Young looked horrible on the scale. We haven't seen Young miss weight since the Volkanovski fight. And I think Young was the short notice replacement for that fight, right? So if that's the case, you're talking about a veteran here in Shane Young, almost 20 fights in his career, missing weight for the second time, but for the first time that we know of with a full camp. That usually is a huge red flag, usually points to some kind of an injury that didn't allow you to be able to put in the road work, do the cardio necessary to take off the rest of that weight when you got close to fight time. So he could be sick. He could be injured. There could be something going on with Shane. And if that's the case, a guy like Miranda is just relentless early with the grappling pressure. And not just that, a lot of these grapplers, they can be so much more aggressive when they strike because they don't care if you take them down. You look at a guy like Miranda, this guy's got so many submissions from his back, guillotine chokes, triangle chokes, heel hooks, all kinds of shit this guy's getting off of his back. Arm bars. I think he's got like 4 arm bars. So he doesn't care if you take him down. He's going to be coming in with big kicks, flying knees, 1-2s down the middle. He's going to be pressuring. So if Shane Young isn't 100%, I think Miranda might crack him in the first or second round. So you're looking at a guy who you're not only getting some line value on with DraftKings, but you're also getting a big-time finishing upside in this spot. And if you get that from a guy at, 7,600, that's going to really help this week. So I got him in my cash lineup, and I also have a bet on Gabriel Miranda, plus 700 to win by first-round submission. 13 of this guy's 16 wins are by first-round submission. So, you look at that, that's over 75% of this guy's win condition is first-round submission, and you're getting them at plus 700 instead of plus, 115 on money line. So it's a nice fat line to go check out on FanDuel Sportsbook.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great tip there. Hot take a little early, but we'll take it because we're always looking for it here. That's a really good one. Might have to play that one myself. All right, next fight going on. And I think Weezy alluded to this. One of the better nicknames, right out of like a Western drama. It's Chuck Buffalo and Charles Radke at 9,100, taking on Blood Diamond, Mike Mathia at 7,100. The line on this fight, where did it go on me? Hang on.
And the DraftKings salaries, please.
I just did the DraftKings salaries, Joe.
I'm kidding.
Joe.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my goodness gracious!
I am kidding.
I'm gonna lose it. All right, here we go. It's Charlie. There you go. So the line on this fight, minus 325, plus 260. That was good. You got me pretty bad. Minus 325, plus 260, and this is pretty easy for me. Charlie Radke can wrestle and grapple, so he wins. I pick him. I don't think there's too much more to say. Like Blood Diamond, even when you do see him get to use the kickboxing, he gets tired in fights. He's gassed by round 3. He's got 3 wins in his professional MMA career. Like this is silly. Charles Radke can grapple and pretty competently, from what I've seen, can flow in position. So he's the pick, and it's pretty easy. And at 9,100, he's going to be around anywhere because Blood Diamond fights generally don't go very long. So 9,100, I am all for Mr. Chuck Buffalo. Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. Coming off of it, he's got a 2-fight losing streak. The only concern I have is, Mr. Buffalo is an American fighter going to Australia. But other than that, I mean, look, Blood Diamond is, he's 35 years old. He's 35 years old. He's coming off of 2 losses. Jeremiah Wells is not a bad loss, although he did lose it in the first round due to a rear naked choke, and then a decision loss to Orion Corsi.
That is a bad loss.
Yeah, this is it for him. I mean, this is really it for him. Ratke's 7-3. I mean, he's 33 years old, which, what has he been doing his whole life? But he is coming off of, 4 wins. His last win was by rear naked choke. So yeah, I see him as the better fighter here. He trains at MMA Masters, which is not a bad camp. So I'm definitely going with Ratke here. I believe our good buddy, it's not a secret because he already put the pot out, but our good buddy, I think, picked Ratke as his tournament play. Our good buddy Brett Apley picked him as his tournament play on his Mayo Media Network video. So that's good enough for me. I'm gonna pick Ratke here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I mean, the obligatory thing of if Blood Diamond gets a knockout, he's probably going to be low owned because most people aren't looking for him. So scarcity there, et cetera, but I agree that I think that's the play. Weez, you want to make this unanimous, or what do you think?
Yeah, I do. I could see why some people might take a shot on Blood Diamond. He is the hometown fighter. Chuck Buffalo making his UFC debut in Australia. That's a big deal, you guys. You have to deal with adrenaline dumps, nerves. Now you're going to Australia. You're going to be fighting in front of a hostile crowd. The local city kickboxing guy is the guy that you're fighting here. He's looking for his first win. They're probably trying to get him his first win. And when you watch the tape on Chuck, he doesn't offensive wrestle that much. I saw some in the Justin Montalvo fight, and he looked really good in the first round of that fight because of the wrestling. And I think if he wrestles here, he looks really good. He probably even looks his money line, which is a wide money line. So, but he would look that good if he were able to wrestle against this guy. And as far as I'm concerned, Blood Diamond is a fraud until further notice, until he proves that he isn't. Because he kind of got ragged out by Orion Corsi, a guy who's been injured for his entire career and a guy who doesn't have the best cardio to go along with all that wrestling that he tries to do in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, I've got to go with Chuck Buffalo here. I think he gets the job done. I love CFFC as an organization. You get a belt in CFFC. You're legit ready for the UFC. Very tough competition, very high-level regional scene competition there. So I'm looking forward to seeing this kid make his debut. And he's doing it against a very one-dimensional fighter in Blood Diamond.
Yeah, a decent point here by Nan. Like, I don't think anybody's here saying Chuck Buffalo is a world beater, So in that respect, sure. But yeah, it's gonna. As Sean is so fond of saying, if this guy beats me, he ruins my night. And as Joe is so fond of saying, it'll be a pork chop that I'm going to eat. Okay, the next fight up is Nasrat Haqparast at 9,500 taking on Landon Quinones at 6,700. I remember that I put the DraftKings salaries in. You can't get me this time, Joe. As for the line here, we have Haqparast. Where does he keep going on me? Haqparast, a big favorite here at -500. Quinones can be had at +360. That line may be a little wide, but the general spirit is okay. I think Haqparast is just gonna, piece Quinones up from range here. He is coming in with the slight reach advantage. We've seen him struggle when he does not have that. Won't be a problem here. I don't think Quinones is the kind of wrestler grappler who's going to, really try to commit to something like that against Haqparast. And so I think probably just Haqparast picks him apart over 3 rounds. As far as DraftKings, I kind of see a decision here. So I don't love Hawkpress from that respect, and I don't really love the dog either. So this might be a pass for me more than anything else. But as far as the pick goes, you want to throw him in cash and like maybe get your 87, 88 points, whatever. You can pick Hawkpress, but I'm probably going to stay off this one more so than not. So what do you think there, Weezy?
Yeah, I would be fading Hack Parast in DraftKings. He's not a finisher, only one finish in 6 UFC wins. So, you cannot pay 9,500 for a guy that's scoring a little over 3 points per minute in a 15-point fight where he's getting a 30-point decision bonus, plain and simple. Also, this fight kind of reminds me of Jamie Malarkey when he fought Muhammad Naimov. Malarkey was a minus 500 favorite. And I remember saying, I'm just betting Naimov here at plus 400 simply because Jamie Malarkey is not good enough at anything to be minus 500 versus anybody in the UFC, right? This is the same thing with Haqparast. This guy should not be minus 500. That's 83.33% implied. Let's just get that out of the way, that there's very little room for error. And then you throw into the fact that this guy doesn't finish fights. So now you got to worry about the judges fucking up your decision here when you're laying that kind of juice, minus 500, on a guy in Haqparast who's largely a counterpuncher, who doesn't throw a lot of volume. He's very defensively responsible. He manages range well. He moves very well. He's got very good takedown defense. He does a lot of things really well that allows him to be able to win minutes, but moments, not so much. So I think Quinones is a very interesting, potentially low-owned punt where you're just saying, hey, man, if I get 3 rounds out of this guy, he might give me 40 points. And if mostly favorites win, that kind of guy at 6,700 probably is optimal.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I like that idea of just, you know what, I can see doing that sometimes. Do that in tennis sometimes, or you just look at a line and you go, you know what, this person just should not be this big of a favorite. And so you bet based on that, you play based on that. Can totally see it. I will not be making that move too much, only because I like too many people in the 7,000 range, and I think I can make enough lineups. But yeah, I don't hate it at all for 6,700, and you see what you get. And now the next fight up. Speak of.
I didn't talk yet.
Oh, sorry, Joe. That was your punishment for
I know
the DraftKings thing earlier. What do you have for this one?
Okay, so what's interesting to me here is that Haqparast is only 28 years old. And I don't know if it's too late to say busted prospect or if he was ever a prospect. This guy was a 7-2 favorite over Drew Dober in a fight that he lost. He's definitely got the back class. If you look at his fight line, man, there are so many canceled fights. Now, not all of them are his fault. Some of his opponents like to pull out, so to speak. But he's got a lot of canceled fights. I would think, and I don't know how you feel about this, Weezy. I would think that this is probably the softest fight that he's had in quite some time. For that reason, and again, I'm not a huge advocate of, minus 400, but like he's been minus 500 before against far better competition than Quinones. I kind of view him as a contrarian play. I don't think he's going to get a lot of ownership. Yeah. And I'm talking about for DraftKings. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get a lot of ownership. If you guys are playing Rainmakers, I would definitely throw him in Rainmakers lineup. We don't really talk a lot about Rainmakers on the show, but maybe we should in the future. But like, I think he's a great contrarian play. And I really do think that this is a soft spot for him. And at 28 years old, okay, now it's time, as my dear departed dad would say, shit or get off the pot. Like, if you're going to make a run, you need to fight a solid 3 times in a year, and you need to destroy this guy. Like, you're not going to be doing yourself any favors with the UFC by taking this guy to decision, right? Irrespective of what he's going to score on DraftKings. A decision win here is not going to look good, and it's not going to be the look you want. And in all honesty, you might as well just ask for your release and go to PFL. if that's how you're going to fight. So I'm going to pick Haparas. I'm going to have him as a contrarian play on DraftKings because I think he's going to be low owned because his salary is so high. And to your point, collectively, his pedigree has been that he has not really been a finisher.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and in the last fight against Makdessi for Haqparast, he got outlanded in that fight. 2 out of 3 rounds, Makdessi's outlanding him. A dude at a 6-inch reach disadvantage, a dude at a 12-year age disadvantage is out there this close with a guy who's now minus 500 against another 28-year-old who's making his UFC debut, who people are sleeping on. This kid's pretty good, this Quinones. So I just think it's an interesting fight because these are the kind of lines where, a lot of people are going to be, obviously a ton of people are on this Haqparast money line, or otherwise it wouldn't be minus 500. But this guy, Quinones, could play spoiler in my opinion.
All right. Yeah, no, I like that. Kind of 2 different ends of the spectrum. Both have merits, and that's what you get on the show. It's like CNN Crossfire back in the day. All right. All right. Next fight up. We've talked about both of these gentlemen previously. It is Jamie Mullarkey at 8,900 taking on John Makdessi at 7,300. Line on this one. Cannot find any of these lines today, folks. My apologies. Is minus 270 for Jamie Mullarkey. Come back on John Makdessi plus 220. And I feel like there's at least going to be agreement between 2 of us here because I actually really like Makdessi in this spot. I think when you give Makdessi an opportunity to fight the fight that he likes, which is a guy who's just going to come forward without defense. We saw what he was able to do against Ignacio Bahamondes. That fight was not all that long ago. It was the same thing with, okay, well, it's an age difference and it's a much younger guy. And Bahamondes was something of a prospect. He was the guy who can overwhelm you with volume, who can swarm you, who can really just make you quit. And Makdessi carved him up, at least for the first 2 rounds. The 3rd round got a bit closer, but Makdessi carved him up for a while. And I think this can be something like that. We all know Makdessi has really good takedown defense. Mullarkey likes to mix that in. I don't think he's going to be able to do it here. And when Mullarkey just tries to come at him and pressure him, we're going to see a lot of that slick John Makdessi kickboxing that he's made a career out of. I think this is a really good spot for him. It's a deceptively good spot. Maybe one that he doesn't get again in such a juicy dog spot like this. So I have to go Makdessi, partly because of what Weezy said, and just why would Mullarkey ever be that big of a favorite, but also because I actually like the matchup. So you put those 2 things together, and I have to pick John Makdessi. Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, it hasn't been that long that Mullarkey just let us down in a major way as a 9-2, aka minus 450 favorite. And at that time we were saying Mullarkey minus 450. His opponent was a short notice replacement in Namov, and he lost by ground strikes in round 2 of that fight. And everybody was uber disappointed because I think he was the biggest favorite on the card. He let us all down for DraftKings. I'm sure he was a parlay buster. So I think there's going to be a lot of negative bias on Mullarkey here. With that said, I do think that this is a fight he can and should win. He is an Australian fighter. I'm going to go back to the well here on Mullarkey. I don't know if I like him as a DraftKings play. Maybe he's another contrarian play, but I'm going to take Mullarkey here. Makdessi is getting old. I think Mullarkey will be able to get him down. Again, Makdessi, I like the guy. He's been in the UFC forever, but this is probably a free trip to Australia, and at least getting some show money. I don't know how much more he's got left in the tank. Mullarkey is still young. He's only 29. This is a fight he really needs to win. He really needs to do something, win. do something relatively spectacular. I mean, he should have all the advantages. His reach is 74 against 68. So he's got a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's also got a 4-inch height advantage. Hopefully those will serve him well. And I'm going to go back to the proverbial well on malarkey here.
Yeah, that's a bunch of malarkey, Joe. All right. Weezy, what do you got for this one?
So I had a bet on Muhammad Naimov the last time out against malarkey that cashed at like plus 395 or I think, or something like that. It was a very wide line. And I've never been that high on malarkey. I don't think he's that good. And a guy like Makdessi, you hear the same thing. I said the same shit when I bet Bahamondes over Makdessi. Oh, he's old. He's at a reach disadvantage. Well, guess what? He's always been old. That dude, when he was 22, was 47. Okay. You look at this guy's face, he's always been the older guy. No matter what the age says, he's one of these dudes got a full mustache when he's in 7th grade, So he's always been the older guy. He's always been the shorter guy. He's always been at a reach disadvantage in this division. He's a small dude, but man, he's really good at managing distance. You look at the distance striking stats in the UFC for Makdessi. Every single category, he's better than malarkey, better than him everywhere. He lands more distance strikes per minute, 5.88 to 4.88. He absorbs less. He absorbs 4.29 while malarkey's absorbing 4.88. Makdessi is more accurate at 50% at distance compared to 43 for malarkey. He's more defensively responsible. 67% distance striking defense is elite compared to 58.5 for malarkey. He's literally better everywhere except for the power numbers. So this guy is going to get the fight that he wants. John Makdessi has had 14 UFC fights, 168 minutes in the cage. 94% of his cage time spent at distance striking range. 86% takedown defense for John Makdessi. He's been controlled for less than 4% of his UFC cage time. And this is a pure kickboxer that's undersized. Believe me, if it were easy to wrestle John Makdessi, dudes would be doing it and doing it successfully. He's had 14 UFC opponents. They've attempted 36 takedowns against him. They've only gotten 5 of them. And 2 of those 5 takedowns came in the last minute of the Nasrat Haqparast fight when he just decided to shoot after 14 minutes of kickboxing, caught him on his heels a couple of times. So this line is kind of hilarious to me. Once again, yeah, Makdessi's flying to he's flying all the way out there to fight the hometown guy, but I mean, I haven't seen anything impressive out of Jamie Malarkey for a very long time. I don't really rate the knockout win over Devontae Smith. We haven't heard anything from Devontae Smith since then. That dude was always injured and wasn't fighting more than once a year anyway. I don't care. I don't give a shit about the knockout win over Kama Worthy. Kama Worthy just got knocked out by a hot shower 2 weeks ago. He's going to be out for 6 months because of that. So I think this is a gift line. I think Makdessi by decision is interesting, but I almost just want to bet the money line because Malarkey's been knocked out in 4 of his 6 professional losses, and one of them against Brad Riddell, he got 7 shades of shit beaten out of him. It just didn't get stopped. So this guy is not as durable as people think he is. He's not defensively responsible. And he's at a deficit in every single distance striking category that I curate here. So I think that there's a lot of value on John Makdessi, and he's training at Fight Ready, getting different looks with some really good coaches there. So very interesting one here.
Very interesting one. And I got to say, a lot of dogs that we're giving looks to here could be a really interesting night. But I agree. I think Makdessi is I like him a lot, almost too much. Kind of scares me when I like a dog this much because it's like, well, if it was this easy, would he be the dog? But I'm gonna stay with it, and I'm gonna not listen to that little voice in my head that tells me I'm unlucky. There's no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as luck, and we're moving on. Okay, it's Jack Jenkins 8,700 taking on Da Woon Jung at 7,000.
Wrong. It's Jack
What?
Jenkins, Chepe Mariscal. Jenkins is not big enough to take on Dawoon Jung.
Oh, okay. I skipped the line. I am sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It is Jack Jenkins, 8,700 at fighting Chepe Mariscal at 7,500. I went up instead of down. Line on this fight, shall I say, is Jenkins at minus 205, Mariscal at plus 170. And it might be a lot more interesting if he was facing Dawoon Jung, because Chepe Mariscal, don't rate him very highly at all. Picked him against Trevor Peek as part of my anyone but Trevor Peek campaign. Now that that's over and done with, I can't say too many good things about Mariscal here. Like, he was tough enough to hang in against the wild strikes of Trevor Peek. Can mix in his wrestling a little bit. Jack Jenkins is better in every single category, in every single way. The physically stronger man as well. Just like him a lot here. Another one of these favorites that's reasonably priced, and that I like quite a good deal. So give me Jack Jenkins and a lot of them. And I think, Weezy, you are first this time.
Yeah, Mariscal is a local product here to Chicago, Illinois, South Side, Cicero, stand up. And Mariscal has fought an absolute who's who of regional scene competition. This guy has really been through the ringer and has fought everybody. Let me list the names that Chepe Mariscal has shared the cage with in promotions outside of the UFC. Sean Soriano, Steve Garcia, Joe Anderson Brito, Yusuf Zalal, Pat Sabatini, Carl Deaton III, Bryce Mitchell, Gregor Gillespie, Frank Buenafuente was a stud. I mean, like, this guy has really fought everybody. And then in addition to that, you go to the amateurs. This guy has 11 amateur fights, and he was 11-0 as an amateur. So Chepe has been around, man. He's been there. He's done that. He's a black belt in judo. He's got good striking. He's got excellent conditioning, man. That Trevor Peek fight, he showed off stud high-level conditioning in that fight. That was an absolute war, up and down. Every punch that Trevor Peek was throwing at him was being thrown with really nasty intentions. It was his UFC debut. There were nerves. There was a live crowd. That was a nuts fight. But Mariscal looked really good for all 3 rounds. Really good conditioning, good durability. Took some big shots in that fight. So I think that he's going to be live here. I think people don't understand how good of a resume this guy has had, and how that he's got about as difficult as a regional scene competition as I've ever seen any fighter have coming into the UFC. And I thought it was an impressive performance against Trevor Peek. And with Jenkins, I still feel like I need to find out more about him. Love his boxing. He's very technical. He's also got excellent conditioning. Great low leg kicks. Mixes in the wrestling in order to win minutes. Shows high fight IQ. He shows the ability to be able to find different paths depending on where his opponent's strengths and weaknesses are in order to find the easiest path to victory for that particular opponent. I love betting on guys like that. So this is an interesting fight. I feel like the line is where it should be. It's taking into account that Jenkins is a little bit younger and a little more hyped. Jenkins is at home. Chepe Mariscal going all the way from Colorado to Australia for this. You can ask Joe. That is not an easy flight. It takes a minute to get acclimated. And if you need to perform at a high level and fight for your life in a cage, you better make sure that you get out there early. So, I think that this is about where it's at. This is a fight that I have no action on, but I think Chepe could be live as a dog. And I also think that we could see Jenkins cover that minus 200 price by just being the smarter fighter and the better minute winner here.
Absolutely. Joe, what do you see in this one?
Okay, so Weezy stole some of my thunder. I mean, I think there's some narrative, on both sides. One, I just want to kind of quickly seize on a point that Weezy made about getting acclimated. And it's important to note, like, how this works. The lower to mid-tier fighters, and I mean that not by talent, but more by how they're compensated, really can only get out here a week or so before. Like they don't have the money to actually come out here. And I think the UFC pays for about a week at a hotel. I may be wrong. And if I'm wrong and someone, knows better than I do, please, like pop into chat. But, so these guys, and it is having been out here since, Monday, Tuesday, it's a 12 to 15 hour time difference, depending on what part of the US you're coming from, and honestly, I made the classic mistake of arriving in the morning and then deciding to take a nap. And that just kind of messed me totally up. I should know better from all my, trips to Thailand. But, so it's really hard. Like the guys who have the money, like the Stricklands, like they could afford to be out here for a little longer. They could do some of their camp out here. The Mariscal is Weezy mentioned Colorado. He trains at Team Elevation, which is a really good camp. To Weezy's point, he's fought in some pretty good promotions. I don't know, Weezy, if he was the LFA champion at featherweight or not. He may have been. He also fought in Cage Warriors. The biggest knock against Jenkins, and again, he has not lost since 2018. So he's on a five-year winning streak, is he really hasn't fought anybody. So I think this is actually a good test for Jenkins. But I would tell you that, for DraftKings, I would certainly have a few shots. Take a few shots with Mariscal. I mean, I think Jenkins is 8.7. I forgot what Mariscal is. 7.1, something like that, likely. So I would definitely take a few shots with Mariscal, but I am going to pick Jenkins for the win here. I think this is a good test for him. Physically, these guys are very similar, height and reach. I think they're both 5'7". They both have similar reaches. So I'm going to go with Jack Jenkins, but I would not at all be surprised, and I don't think it would be a huge upset if Mariscal not only was competitive, but actually somehow managed to win.
So I see that point, and it's 75, Joe, and I did say the price, but I see the point. The way I kind of look at it is, and maybe this isn't fair, you tell me. The fact that you have to go to war with Trevor Peek is kind of an indictment on your ability to beat a guy like Jack Jenkins, in my view. I think
I disagree with that. I think you need a gun to get Trevor Peek out of there. I think you would need to kill that man to make him quit in a fight, and I thought Mariscal really performed admirably, because if you watch the pace of that fight, it was high paced for 3 full rounds.
For sure.
And Peek was wide open mouth, exhausted, and Mariscal was not.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, I don't question the cardio whatsoever. Good cardio for sure. Just think Jenkins is in a good spot here. But I take the point that he showed toughness, and he showed the ability to go through a war, and he showed conditioning and all that stuff. And the resume that which you pointed out, which is, as you say, something that we rarely, if ever, see from somebody on the regional scene. So I take all those points, and maybe it should be a better fight than I initially thought, but still fairly heavy on Jenkins, but definitely interesting. And now we go to the fight where I thought we were at number 6 when we were at number 7. We are at number 6 now, and it is Carlos Ulberg, 9,200, taking on Da Woon Jung at 7,000. Line on this fight is Carlos Ulberg at -300. Da Woon Jung plus 240. And, I'll be the first to admit, I didn't really like Ulberg. It took me a long time to come around to him, even when he was in the midst of this 3-fight knockout streak that he's currently on, because I still didn't think that, he was defensively responsible. I still had questions about his cardio. It wasn't even some of the wins weren't that impressive. He is much more attacking now, much more aggressive now. I like that about him. And my problem with Da Woon Jung, he's a really good boxer, really good technical boxer. He can even wrestle a little bit when he wants to. We saw that anomalous performance, that 8 takedown performance 2 or 3 fights ago. So he can wrestle when he wants to. My problem here, and we saw this in his knockout win against Kennedy Njoku, is his defense is his guard way too often. He just puts his hands up and lets those shots bounce off his guard and come what may. And I don't think you can do that against somebody like Carlos Ulberg. I think he's too powerful. I think he's too fast. And I just think some of these shots are going to get through. I think that Ulberg has shown he's the real deal. And you just can't mess around with him in the cage anymore like you could maybe at one time. So I'm going Ulberg here, and I think it's pretty likely that this happens by stoppage. I believe we are going with Joe this time. Joe, what do you got?
Yeah, so that was an interesting fight against Kennedy because he was lighting Kennedy up in the first round and then death gassed in the second round. I mean, if you really want to, I mean, he gassed so badly, it should actually be like a case study in death gassing after one round because it was that bad. I am just predisposed to not liking fighters that good looking. He's, I believe, the Bachelor, New Zealand. Like literally, he is like on the Bachelor, New Zealand. I like fighters that need to win to get the hot looking girls. And he's kind of already there, which makes me predisposed to not like him. With that said, I think he's been on a really good run. This is not an insurmountable opponent for him either. It's not a huge leap up in class here. I mean, like Kennedy was probably his toughest fight, and he was looking really good in that fight until he kind of death gassed. So, look, Jung is not bad. I mean, he has had a couple of bad fights. So I'm going to retract that statement. I think this maybe is a step up for him. I mean, the last two losses that Jung had did not look so great, but Jung, did not look so great, but he's not a bad fighter. I mean, I think he was a favorite against Devin Clark, was he not? Yeah, he was actually a 5-2 favorite against Devin Clark. And then he just got lit up. He got knocked out by Dustin Jacoby as a favorite. He beat Kennedy Njeku with elbows in the first round, if you look 3 fights back. So I'm going to retract that statement. I'm going to say this is a step up in competition. Obviously, flying from Korea to Sydney is not as onerous a flight as the Americans have. So I don't expect him to be that lagged. I think I'm looking forward to a good fight here, but I'm still going to give it to Ulberg. I still think he's the better pure boxer, and I don't think that Jung is probably going to give him the type of fight that he wants. Ulberg. I like the fact also he's another city kickboxing guy, so he's got all his teammates there. So I'm going to go with Ulberg, but I will have a couple of shares of Jung in DraftKings simply for backlash and the fact that he's not going to have some of the same issues in acclimating as the others. And he's a pretty tall guy. He's like 6'4" with a 78.5 reach. Jung is. So I'm going to go with Ulberg. I want Ulberg to win here. But have a few shares of Jung in DraftKings.
All right, Joe. Good to see that your good-looking guy bias is not affecting your judgment on that one. Weezy, what do you got for this fight?
Yeah, the good-looking guy angle does nothing in this fight because Daun Jung is very good-looking as well. I mean, let's just face it. The dude is a handsome man as well. So this is going to be one that the ladies are going to be watching, with soaked panties. So, I think that's what they're doing here. There's some good-looking dudes on this card, so while the rest of us are going, we don't give a shit about this main card. Some of the ladies are tuning into the Pleasure Man, to Tyson Pedro, to Daun Jung, to Carlos Ulberg. There's some eye candy for the ladies here. So, ladies, stand up. Time to buy some pay-per-views, Let's get some money to the UFC. They don't have nearly enough, but I agree with Joe. Right, yes. I agree with Joe that Daun Jung is a sneaky little DraftKings play because what Ulberg does really well, obviously, is manage distance and kickbox. That's his base. He's not a wrestler. He's not a submission grappler. All of his wins that are finishes are by knockout. This guy has only attempted 2 takedowns in the UFC. He's gotten both of them, but he has less than 6% control time for. His fight stays standing 93% of the time. Daun Jung, this fight stays standing 55% of the time. So in my opinion, if Da Jung decides, you know what, I'm not going to play Carlos Ulberg's game. I'm going to clinch up with this dude. I'm going to try to throw him around. I'm going to try to do something that I'm not necessarily known for doing. Da Jung's got 9 takedowns, but 8 of them came against William Knight, who's horrible. So how good of a wrestler is Da Jung? Is it really in his skill set, in his toolbox to go out there and wrestle for 15 minutes? Probably not. But if he does, like if he goes out there and he clinches up with this dude, he wears on Ulberg in the first, right? And doesn't allow Ulberg to stay at distance striking range, that's a different type of conditioning and it's a different type of fight. And we know that styles make fights. So I do think that there is a path for Da Jung to make this fight really dirty and really competitive to where he's going to look a lot better than what he looks on his money line right now. But still, Ulberg is such a good athlete. It's the big cage. Ulberg moves so well laterally, and because he's so good at using his distance and his kicks in order to be able to attack, and everything comes long and straight, well, then it's going to be difficult for Da Jung to close the distance on this guy, and it's going to be difficult for him to find the entries on the takedowns that he needs. And if he gets too sloppy, he's going to walk onto something here. So I do have Ulberg parlayed up with Manel Kopp, who we're going to talk about later on in the fight, or later on in the card. But I think Ulberg gets the job done here. But if I'm doing 100 DraftKings lineups, I'm getting Da Jung in there for some price savings and some high upside potential, because we don't know what Ulberg looks like in a grappling heavy match, do we? But we know that we've seen Da Jung thrive there a couple of times in the UFC. So I think that there is a path for Da Jung, but I still think I'm not overthinking this, and I'm going with Carlos Ulberg to get the win and potentially get a knockout here.
Right, absolutely. And I have to say, I agree with Weezy in another respect as well. I just went ahead and looked at Da Jung's picture on DraftKings. He is a very good-looking man, so I have to say that as well. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in so far. Before we move on to the main card, pay-per-view card, we are going to take a quick break for those in our audio-only podcast listeners. All right, and we are back. Hope you all had a nice break in that time. Maybe went and got yourself a nice little glass of milk, settled in for the main card, because it is time for the pleasure man. I cannot say that name without laughing. Anton Turkalj at 8,200, taking on Tyson Pedro at 8,000. The line on this fight is Turkalj, actually the smallest of favorites, minus 115, taking on Pedro, who can come back at minus 105. And listen, I said in my write-up of this fight, I think the fact that this line is even close speaks volume to how far Tyson Pedro has fallen as a prospect in the eyes of the betting community. When he first came here, his grappling ability, his power, his agility was looking like maybe would be a prospect in this division. Had to take those 2 years off. I believe it was 2 years. And really just hasn't looked the same in the cage of late. But Anton Turkalj is just sort of a mess. I mean, he's a long fighter. He can grapple a little bit. He can sort of stay in there and do. But the one thing you saw in his fight with who was it? With Petrino, the last fight, where he got 5 takedowns in that fight. And you think that, a couple different times, like he had the back, he looked like he was in some really advantageous positions. I just don't see him as a fighter who has any control over what he's doing whatsoever. I don't see him. He's not the kind of fighter who can ride momentum to victories. Weezy, you talked about minutes versus moments before. He is most certainly a moments fighter. If he's going to get you, he's going to get you in a moment, and that's going to be it. I don't see him sustaining any prolonged momentum, especially in this fight against Tyson Pedro, who, as I said, is a good grappler. I do like his low kicks. I think those will come in handy here too. If Turkalj can just go so wild and expend so much energy, because the one thing you can say about him even when he's tired, there are two kinds of guys fighters who get tired. One who get tired and they quit, and one who you can tell they're tired, but they keep fighting. And I would say Turkalj is in the second camp. So if he can do that, if he can just really pour on a pace, then he's got something going. But if we're just talking about skills and what should happen based on skills, I got to go Tyson Pedro here. Just too better grappler. The leg kicks, as I said, I don't know more agile specifically, but I would say like more controlled, at least in terms of footwork. And as I say, I think their college is just a mess. So I have to take Pedro here. Probably be a little heavy on this one. This is one of the interesting ones. You're always interesting in these 8,200, 8,000 scenarios, especially in the heavier weight classes, especially in a fight like this, because they're probably going to score well and they're both reasonable. So you probably should have one of them. Having said all that, Weezy, I'm going to kick it over to you first. How are you seeing this fight?
Yeah, this is a must own for DraftKings. You know, the Tyson Pedro has 13 professional fights and 9 wins. All 9 of his wins come in the very first round. Every fight that Tyson Pedro has been past the 5-minute mark, he's lost that fight. And then on the other side, you got a guy in Turkalj who's not very technical. The entries on his takedowns are shite. You know, everything that he throws is meant to try to take your head off, but he's got legendary durability and really good cardio. So it's two opposite archetype of fighters. When you watch Pedro win, he wins everything in the first round. He's a dynamic and explosive early. He's going to be the far more technical fighter. He'll be the more powerful striker on the feet. He'll be the far more dangerous submission grappler. But Turkalj is the kind of guy who absorbs huge shots early, who gets put into bad spots early, who finds ways to survive. And then, not unlike Homer Simpson in his boxing career, he just takes this beating until you're completely gassed, and then he finds a moment. He finds a moment, and he uses that moment to finish the fight, whether it's via submission or with big shots on the feet. And we saw it in the Petrino fight like 3 or 4 times. Turkalj had him in really bad spots. But Vitor Petrino showed amazing conditioning and athleticism in that fight. Tyson Pedro does not have good conditioning. He's one round or bust, and he always has been. I mean, this guy's getting slept by the ghost of Mauricio Shogun Rua in round 3. You know, I mean, that's how bad he is after the fight gets out of the first round. He's the complete opposite of Anton Turkalj. Anton Turkalj is a guy who could take a tremendous amount of damage early in a fight, but you'll never ruin his will, and he'll never quit on himself. And then he'll find that moment in the fight that turns the fight and ends it. Pedro will never find that moment late. If he doesn't find the moment early, he panics and he quits. So these are completely different archetype of fighters. But I could tell you this, right? Either Tyson Pedro's finishing this fight via submission in round number 1, or he gets shown the door in round number 2 or round number 3 after he unloads on the face of Anton Turkalj until he can't fucking believe that man is still standing there. And then he says, I can't do this for another 8 minutes. And then he just finds the door. So I think either way, somebody's getting served here. Whoever wins this fight probably scores in the triple digits. And you're getting a triple digit winner out of a guy that's either 8,000 or 8,200. I think it's a fascinating fight. I have a bet on Anton Turkalj to win in round number 3 because I know Tyson Pedro's got quit in him. I know he's got quit in him. And it's so much easier to quit when you realize that no matter what you do, that idiot standing across from you just refuses to go down. He refuses to fuck off. And that's what Turkalj does. And that style breaks Tyson Pedro. So I'm not very committal, on who's going to win this fight. I just know it's going to be awesome. I know it's going to be back and forth. And I know somebody's going to get served.
Yeah, well said. I mean, we like fights for different reasons, right? We like fights when there's a lot of stakes on the line, when it's 2 technicians. We want to see 2 guys with sparkling records, or we like fights because we think they're going to be a big, dumb mess. And I think that this one is in the second category there. Joe, having said all that, what do you think about this one here?
Well, I got a name and a location for you. The name is Modesto, and the location is Perth. Tyson Pedro was a minus 230 favorite in that fight in his home country of Australia. On the undercard for was it the main card? It might have been the main card for Volkanovski Makhachev. That was just so highly disappointing. I mean, there's a small amount of line value, I believe, in Pedro, right? Weezy, Pedro is still a favorite right now, a small favorite. Minus 130, something around those lines. So there is a small amount of line value on DK because he is the 8K fighter on DK, right? The Pleasure Man, God, the Pleasure Man is 8.2K. I'm totally with you. I mean, I think the way to play this is if you're betting it, you look at a first round play on Pedro, and then just sprinkle in some round 2s and 3s, live if it gets past the first round. Sprinkle in some wagers on the Pleasure Man. I'm going to take Pedro here, just because if this guy loses 2 fights in a row at home, like, what's the point, right? What's the point? I always said that Jake Matthews was always going to be a pack rim like filler fighter unless he gets a camp outside of his dad's garage, and he's looked a little better recently. But like, he doesn't even train at a great camp, Pedro. I think he trains with his dad, like Jake Matthews does. So like, I don't know what he was doing during his time off. But if he does not win this fight in Australia, again, he may as well just kind of hang it up and, go back to teaching judo or whatever he does in his spare time, because the USC hasn't exactly been putting killers in front of him recently. So
got that right.
So let's go with Pedro. Let's take the small amount of salary that we're going to get in the form of line value at 8K, for a minus 130 fighter. I'll take it. I'm taking it, though. I'm taking it with like my fingers crossed. And I do recommend too, if you're spreading, and I am not spreading, I am not mass entering. I already pretty much told everybody why, but if you are spreading, you should have both sides of this fight.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's move on. And boy, I got to tell you, Weez, I understand what you said about the fights that you're interested in, but man, when you're looking at it, this is a non-impressive main card for a pay-per-view. Having said that, let's move on to the next fight. It is actually a rematch. Let's say the long-awaited rematch. Justin Tafa, 9,000, taking on Austin Lane at 7,000. The line on this fight. Tafa can be had at minus 205. Lane coming back at plus 170. And, this fight was, they had the fight. I don't remember how long ago exactly. First minute, eye poke happens. No contest. We have to run it back. I'm not sure if anybody particularly wanted to see this run back, but we have it now. So lucky us. Austin Lane, of course, most famous for getting knocked out by Greg Hardy on the Contender Series. That said, I don't hate Austin Lane as kind of a low-level, middling heavyweight. He's agile. He's got some good footwork. He can put some strikes together. Not very good defensively. But Tafa, just the better kickboxer, but way more stationary, way more, let the fight come to me. If the fight starts going downhill, then he can take it. But like we saw in the fight with I hate looking up names during the pod, but this is a point I want to make. So Carlos Felipe, his fight with Carlos Felipe, comes out, wins that first round handily, and then just kind of gives away the next 2 rounds, just sort of standing and watching. So, it's kind of hard what you're going to get with Justin Tafa, whose most impressive win to date is probably still, he knocked out Parker Porter, so fair enough. and then Juan Adams, Harry Hunsucker, these guys are very much not in the UFC anymore. So, I don't know. Maybe when I wrote this up, I wrote it up as a prize picks play just because I didn't want to have to deal with picking a winner. But the more I think about it, I think maybe I'm going Austin Lane here just slightly. Just for the reasons I mentioned, and just because like Tafa's been dangerous, but against very hurtable competition. And Austin Lane, I guess he's hurtable too, but I look for uncommon skill sets a lot. And if you're agile as a heavyweight, that's an uncommon skill set. I like that, especially in a low level fight. I think he can carry some weight, no pun intended, for the weight class here. So I'm going to take Austin Lane in sort of I don't know, low level heavyweight kind of way. Joe, what do you think for this?
Yeah, I'm on Lane as well. I mean, he actually has some very distinct physical advantages in this fight. He has got a half a foot in height and a half a foot in reach on Tafa. Looking at his fight line, it's reminiscent of a fighter that is improving, maybe slightly. I mean, he's got that 4th round finish in Fury against Juan Adams, where he won the Fury heavyweight championship. Looked decent in his Contender Series fight. Again, he's definitely got size on Tafa. I think, I don't know if Tafa came in at max weight or not. I know Tuivasa did.
He did.
But he did. But,
Yeah.
I think he's in better shape. I think his cardio is better. I like his DraftKings price. I mean, on a card where we're really struggling to find underdogs that we could make a case for, far be it for me to offer up a 35-year-old heavyweight, fighting out of his country, out of his, fighting across the world against a local. But I think this is as good a place as any to plant the flag, and I guess I'll plant the flag on Austin Lane. I'm not super impressed with Tafa.
Yeah, I will say that 35 is the heavyweight 25, so you're okay there. I mean, he's pretty much a spring chicken, so no worries in that department. Okay, as we move on the card.
Wait, Weezy's got to talk.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be quick though. Justin Tafa, I've got as the ass shaving of the week. I don't think Austin Lane is very good, but the thing about the heavyweight division is that you don't have to be good. You got to be good at one thing, whether it's wrestling, whether it's striking and good takedown defense, whether it's conditioning, whether it's athleticism. If you've got one thing that you can focus on and do well, you could beat 2/3 of this division. It's so bad. It's so low. And that's why a guy like Austin Lane is here. You look at his striking on tape. I mean, it is so bad. His striking reminds me of Virna Jandiroba's striking, and that's not a compliment, okay? Virna Jandiroba is a phenomenal grappler. She is not a very good striker. She throws that same 1-2 every time, and that's all that Lane does. He just throws this 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. A guy like Tafa, who's a skilled kickboxer, he's going to time that shit. He's going to get inside. He's going to find this guy's chin and knock him out in the first round. But I always say it's a big but. If he can't find Lane, Lane's so much bigger, so much longer. This guy's a defensive lineman in the NFL. These guys are freak athletes. And Justin Tafa is not a freak athlete. So you always got to get, you just got to keep in mind what you got here. This could go tits up for Justin Tafa if he's not able to land that big shot early, because a guy like Lane is going to be just much faster than him. He's going to have much better footwork. He's going to be, just a way, way, way better athlete. So it's an interesting matchup. I think Tafa's the better striker. I don't think Lane's a good enough wrestler to kind of get, to weather the early storm here. So I see Tafa getting the first round knockout.
All right. And now moving on to one of the ones we lost, as Weezy said earlier, but they kept Cop on the card, I think, because they started feeling bad that they were canceling all his fights. So we have Manel Cop at 9,300 taking on Felipe Dos Santos at 6,900. the line on this fight. We have another wide line here. Manel Kape minus 410, Felipe Dos Santos plus 320. And Manel Kape, when he first came out of Ryzen, the main thing I saw with him is that he was just really had trouble with wrestlers, really had trouble getting stuck on his back and sort of bleeding rounds away. And he would get back up and win some of those fights. But I did earmark it as like, oh, this could be a problem. He's done way better with that. Not only his takedown defense, but also threatening submissions off of the ground. We saw in his fight with David Dvorak, he was very active, almost submitted Dvorak in that first round. And he's such a good measure of distance and range. And Felipe Dos Santos is just sort of like a pocket boxer who's going to try and get inside and land his shots. And I think he's going to be, swinging and missing a lot at Manel Kape. I think Manel Kape is going to measure his distance here and take this home pretty comprehensively. I don't know if it ends in a finish. The jury's still out on whether I think Manel Kape is a finisher or not, because a lot of his finishes are very explosive, like flying knees and moments like that. I'm not sure if it's something that he can build on or like if it's anything more than just, I got you. There you go. I mean, he could do that against Felipe Dos Santos because I don't see much in Dos Santos here, to be honest. But 9,400 is a big price, and the flyweights, they move fast. They score a lot of points. This could be a fight that has a lot of action in it in the first round, and if it does, it favors Manel Kape. So I'm picking him. Might not have too much of the 9,400. I like some more fighters in the mid range and a little bit lower, like Mr. Chuck Buffalo and guys like that. So the pick is Kape, and maybe a little bit more of a stay away from me than maybe some others. Weezy, what do you think?
Yeah, I've got Kape parlayed up with Ulberg on the money line here to get like a minus 130-ish that I went for like 2 units. And I also went when the Kape line opened on Bet Online, his submission prop opened at plus 1,600, while the KO and decision props opened at like plus 175 a piece or something like that. Right. So I jumped on the submission prop. I mean, this guy's got 5 wins by submission in his career. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We almost saw him submit Dvorak. I remember even DC talking about it because he went to AKA to work his wrestling, and he was working AKA Thailand and also AKA in California too. And DC was saying during a couple of his fights that like this guy's in the gym submitting everybody, and that he's got really good jiu-jitsu and really underrated jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I mean, I think wherever this fight goes, this is a 22-year-old kid, Felipe Dos Santos, taking this fight on short notice. He was supposed to be fighting on the Contender Series. His opponent pulled out just at the same time that Kai Kara-France pulled out. So they, and it was like I said earlier, who's taking a fucking Manel Kape fight in Australia on short notice? You're no manager worth their salt is letting their fighter take that fight, because you're going to lose. And then you got to go all the way to Australia to do it. It's just, you got so many cards stacked against you. When you need somebody to do that, you take some debutante that's just looking for the opportunity. They don't care that they're going to get their ass shaved. Now they got a contract. He's going to get 2 more fights. He'll get a much more winnable fight in his next deal. But this one, man, Manel Kape has had 3 straight fighters cancel on him. One of them on the day of the fight. He wants to put his fist through a wall. This guy's like a pit bull in a cage that's been starved for 2 days. I think he's going to murder this dude.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a feeling that it's about to be unanimous. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, it is. I just want to point out, though, that Dos Santos, watch this kid in the future, right? He's only 22 years old. He's 7-0. He's a training partner of Charles do Bronx Oliveira. He is training with a lot of guys. It's Shooter Box, Diego Lima in Brazil. A lot of his training partners have fights, UFC fights booked on the card. So it would not surprise me. Now, what I would like to see happen here is Kape get a quick finish, this kid not take a lot of damage, and then maybe get put on like a November card, with one of the other guys from Chudo, from his camp. But he looks good. He's 7-0. I think this is a gimme fight for Kape. He needs a payday. He's going to need to make quick work of this kid because, he's lobbying for a title fight. So, yeah, of course, it's going to be unanimous here with Kape. But watch this guy when he fights back coming off a loss to Kape. And I'm going to look at seriously betting him, big in his next fight. I just hope he doesn't take a lot of damage. And I want to see him maybe get on a card coming up in November, December, because I think he could have some potential at 125. But yes, Kape all the way. All
right, Kape all the way. Okay, so it is. Is this the co-main event? It is. Okay, I'm losing track because these are not co-main event style fights. Nonetheless, it is Alex Volkov taking 8,800 rather, taking it on Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa at 7,400. The line on this fight: Volkov minus 250, Tuivasa plus 200. And I'll just open by saying I think that's too wide. Like, okay, Tuivasa got knocked out in his last 2 fights. That was Cyril Gane, the most technical striker in the UFC, and by the way, a game of war, and the most dangerous striker in the UFC. I think we can all agree now, the way it's looking anyway. I don't think that diminishes Tafa. I don't think that diminishes, what is his name? I don't think that diminishes Tuivasa whatsoever. I knew I would get it. I don't think that diminishes him whatsoever, really. I think he's going to be the same fighter who always comes forward and is always throwing big. And I don't think that Volkov likes that. I'm not just talking about the Derek Lewis fight here. I also think that, continually coming forward, Volkov needs that range. He needs to stick you at range. And Tai Tuivasa is not going to let that happen. He's also extremely tough. As I say, I don't let that quick knockout loss in the last one sway me too much. I think he's going to go ahead and give it a war. I know Volkov has looked good lately. I know he's getting back to a few finishes here. But I'm not counting out Tuivasa at all. I think getting in Volkov's face and throwing hands, if he can stick around long enough, he's going to make that pay off. And plus 200 and the big dog salary on DraftKings, I'm going to go with it. So I'm going with Tuivasa here. And Joe, what is your take on the co-main event?
Yeah, so I like Drago a fair bit here. I think he's more athletic. I think he's more technical. I've always been a big fan of Volkov. The guy is a monster. He's 6'7". I think he'll handle Tuivasa pretty easily. Look, his last 2 wins were good wins against Rosenstruck and who was the other guy he beat? I know he's coming off Romanov. Yeah, and first
that was not a good win, but that's okay.
Punches from back control. But Rosenstruck, he boxed him up. I would argue that Rosenstruck is probably a better pure boxer than Tai Tuivasa. But again, I like Drago here. I think look, I'm not going to say the fight's not going to be entertaining, and I think the crowd will be going wild, and he's going to have a lot of support. He came in, he barely made weight, which was kind of funny. Tuivasa came right in at the limit, barely making weight here. I don't know what his cardio is going to look like if this fight gets into a second round. But give me Drago here. And again, I like him a fair bit. I like the salary. I think he's what is he, 8.9?
He is 8.8.
8.8. I like him at 8.8. Yes. I would be using him a fair amount. And then you want to maybe sprinkle some Tuivasa in there. But I like Drago a fair bit here.
All right, Weezy, what do you got for the co-main?
Yeah, I'm picking Volkov to win the fight. He's the better distance manager. He's much more defensively responsible. He's much more accurate. He throws more volume. He's got a 2.85 positive significant strike differential at distance, while it's negative 0.79 for Tuivasa. Better conditioning, better size, better length, more experienced. And he's fought the slightly better brand of competition at the UFC level as well, but just by a very small amount. I think Volkov might try to mix in the wrestling, but it's not very likely. But it's a heavyweight fight, and Volkov's coming a long way from Russia to Australia for this fight, fighting in front of a hostile crowd. I think there are some reasons to like Tuivasa here. His performance against Cyril Gane was better than Volkov's performance against Cyril Gane. I know that Tuivasa got knocked out, but I mean, Volkov had nothing for Gane. At least Tuivasa was providing a little bit of danger. Gane was definitely respecting him, and he got dropped, as a matter of fact. So I think that this fight is the line is a little wide. But I mean, if you put a gun to my head and said I had to bet a money line here, I'd be on the Tuivasa plus money side. I don't hate Tuivasa as a DraftKings play. But Volkov probably does get the job done because I just think he's the better fighter.
All right. Joe, did we go to you yet? Or are we going to you?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Good to know I'm on top of things, boys. Okay, the main event is Israel Adesanya, 9,700, taking on Sean Strickland at 6,500. Line on this fight is impossibly wide, as you would expect. It is minus 650 for Adesanya, plus 475 against Sean Strickland. And this might be a good fight for Adesanya. It might be the antidote for some of his more quote-unquote boring fights, because Sean Strickland is going to try to pour volume on him, and his defense, I don't know if you guys saw it, it's become a little bit of a meme circulating. The Dan Hardy taking a look at Sean Strickland's kick defense, where he goes like this and leaves his head wide open, and Dan Hardy just kind of sighs. That's the kind of defense that's not going to fly against an excellent kickboxer versus Adesanya. Sean Strickland likes to pressure and pour on the volume. I think when he tries to pour on the volume here, he's going to get slipped and countered very hard. Could look a little something like that first Whitaker fight, where Whitaker just kind of tried to come out guns blazing and showed us that's not the style that you use to fight Israel Adesanya. So, I don't think Sean Strickland will have anything. You can't say maybe he'll wrestle. He won't. He doesn't want to do it. He's not going to do it. Most recently, I'm sure he's trolling a little bit, but went on record saying jiu-jitsu is fake and he doesn't believe in it. So, Sean Strickland is a guy. If you get tired in front of him, or you're not on your toes in front of him, he'll beat you. Otherwise, at a high level, I don't think you can pick Sean Strickland. So Israel Adesanya, the line may be wide just because plus 500 is always looking a little wide, plus 450. But again, the spirit is correct. I think Adesanya probably does the deed here. Wouldn't be surprised if this is a knockout, just because Strickland's going to come at him and Adesanya is going to have the answers. So I am taking Adesanya. And Weezy, we'll go to you first for the main event. How do you see it?
Yeah, I see it like you see it, Chris. This is just stylistically, on a pure stylistic level, this is an ideal opponent for Israel Adesanya. He wants his opponent to walk forward. Israel's a brilliant counter striker. So he wants somebody walking forward. He wants somebody throwing volume. And Sean has a knack for not giving a fuck about whether or not, this is the best path to victory. I mean, what he did against Alex Pereira was one of the all-time stupidest fight IQ performances that you could ever have. You get a guy that has no takedown defense and no jiu-jitsu game, and you're out there, and a left hook that will send people to the land of wind and ghosts. And what do? You stand in front of them, and you get your head spun around, in the very first round, predictably. He's got his phone in the car like the week after the fight, and he goes, "Man, I'd stand in front of him again." He got lucky with that one. Like, he didn't even learn anything from that, and that's a bad thing. Usually when you get into a motorcycle accident that nearly costs you your career and your life, maybe you sell the motorcycle and you get yourself a Prius. Not Strickland. He got off. He's just still riding that bike around like a moron. Still posting videos on Instagram of him taking bike jumps. Shit, he's gonna die, dude. He's gonna die young. He'll probably get his head lopped off by a low-flying traffic copter one of these days. So yeah, he's gonna give Israel exactly what he wants. I bet the over 4.5 rounds earlier in the week, looking at more of a data play. But stylistically, now I have the buyer's remorse, and I'll probably be hedging out of that play by playing Adesanya by knockout. Because I think Sean's just going to walk on to something. I don't think he'll fight smart. I don't think he'll wrestle. I don't think he'll be careful and about the volume and the pressure. So I think that this is going to be an easy win for Israel.
Yep. And once again, I think we're not going to have much drama here. Joe, how you see the main event?
True story. Sean Strickland nearly broke up with his girlfriend because theoretically she would not help him hide a body if he hit someone with his car. He was doing an interview like right after his weight cut, and I think the Australian fans are actually going to be cheering for Strickland. I honestly think that that's going to happen. He said the politicians suck, but the fans are all long dicks. Now, I have no idea what that means. Like, I don't know if there's like, if I don't, maybe he was just being incoherent, but would there be, honestly, let's be real. Would there be anything better right now in the UFC than having Sean Strickland as the middleweight champ? I mean,
love it.
Oh my God, his interviews, his TV. Yeah. I mean, you got to watch these interviews with Nina because they got this great repartee going. I mean, and not to mention she's hotter than the barrel of Bob. So I don't think that he's going to win here. I think he's going to give Izzy the type of fight that Izzy wins 99 times out of 100. But boy, would I love Strickland to catch him with something and just make Izzy go away. And I honestly think that he will get a lot of applause from the fans in Australia. So I'm going to pick Izzy, but since I'm not going to, oddly enough, have a lot of money riding on this, I'm probably going to be cheering for Strickland. I need to make a pick. I mean, also DraftKings 9.5K or 9.6K. And that's pretty hefty. So you're going to need to get 9.7K. Wow. You're going to need to get some points here out of him. So anyway, and there's not going to be any takedowns. There's going to be very little control time, right? So like, where are you going to get your points from? But I'm going to be rooting hard for Strickland. But like, legitimately, I have to say that this is a perfect fight for Izzy. So I'll reluctantly pick Izzy, but I will be rooting hard for Sean Strickland, and it will make that 15.5-hour flight to Vancouver on Monday morning so much better if Strickland wins.
Yeah. All right. Hot take time, boys and girls. This is where we look over the card and we see something that is very juicy for the bettors out there that has, we think, a better than average shot of coming in. Does anybody, I'm going to open up the floor. Anybody have a hot take they would like to bestow onto the audience?
Yeah, because I haven't really done betting for this card, I may actually put down some bets at one of the local bookies here in Australia, in Sydney. But my hot take is going to be in aggregate. Australian/New Zealand fighters are going to be sub 500 for the card. That's my hot take, is that they're going to be sub 500.
All right. I like it. A little off the beaten track. Weezy, I think you gave us your hot take early on, but you want to reiterate it for us?
Yeah, I've got like 3 hot takes, that 3 lines that are plus 700 or better that you can just sprinkle for a little bit of lunch money on them, and maybe one of them hits, you'll be up on the 3 plays. Anton Turkalj, the pleasure man, in round 3 with that bedroom cardio, that never quit, never say die, fuck until it's over. Anton Turkalj, round 3, plus 1,200 right now on several books. Hey,
Weezy, how smart would it be for like Trojan to like sponsor this guy?
I think it would be absolutely a winning play.
It would be unbelievable. Like, put some money in his pocket, like give Trojan a pop, no pun intended.
Absolutely. I think that there are a number of different people that are missing out on major advertising opportunities to have Anton the Pleasure Man Turkalj, pimping out their products. Yep. I also like Gabriel Miranda by round 1 submission. Like I say, this guy's got 16 wins in his career. 13 of them are by first round submission. That's when both fighters are dry. that's when it's usually easiest to get that first takedown because they don't know what kind of an entry you're coming with. And, that's when we see the majority of submissions, especially from Miranda. And then I also went with a small play on Manel Kape by submission. His decision prop is juiced to the tits. His KO prop is juiced to the tits, but the sub prop is priced just about right. So you got a lot of value there. And the guy's got 5 wins by submission in his career, and he's finished all but 2 of his 16 wins inside the distance. So if you figure this guy's going to win and he's going to win inside the distance, the value play is Manel Kape by submission.
Absolutely, yeah. I like all of those. I'm gonna look like a piker here in comparison, but we talked about win conditions before. Tai Tuivas's win conditions are knockout. I think plus 300 is more than enough of a price there to take a shot against Volkov, a guy who's going to be in his face, going to be throwing shots, and is going to get that knockout if he wins. So plus 300 Tuivasa, I like it. Let's open it up to the crowd. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. I don't see any in there now. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Hey, Chris, what's your shirt size? What's your shirt size?
I think medium. Why is that, sir?
I'll get you a large. No, well, if I'm not going to pay full price inside, but if we've got those hawkers outside the arena, like selling UFC shirts, I'll grab you one. I'll grab you a large.
All right, yeah. Large may be the play. I mean, I was being, trying to be a little modest, but large.
Yeah, I'll give you a large. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to pay the usurious prices that they charge inside, but if they're selling them outside, I'll grab you a shirt.
All right, definitely appreciate it. And it doesn't look like we have any hot takes from the audience, but no worries there. We still appreciate you all watching and tuning in. Want to thank Joe, as always. Want to thank Uncle Weezy for filling in on short notice. Great job today, man. Great takes, great plays, great hot takes. Especially, everybody look out. Sprinkle in your lunch money, your paper route money on those. See if they hit. And as for us, we will be back next month with the next pay-per-view card. Check out all these guys on their Twitter accounts, on their YouTube pages. You can check it out on my page that I put up on RotoWire. I'll link that as well. Has Uncle Weezy's information, has Joe's information. Otherwise, guys, thank you all so much. We are going to get out of here. Enjoy the fights, and good luck.
Real quick, Chris, before we sign off,
yes.
Weezy and Brady, DFS by the numbers, right? That's Brady, right?
Yep.
They put out the earliest content of anybody. And in order for them to do this, at the end of a card, I don't know about you guys, but at the end of a UFC card, like late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, the last thing I want to do is think about the next card. That's what these guys do to put content out on Sunday evening at 7:00. So if you want early content, and also it takes a lot to be actually the first out there. You don't have any input from anybody else. You're kind of setting the market. And that's what Brady and Weezy have been doing for a long time. So 7 p.m. on Sundays, get that early, listen to that early content. I will listen to them. I will listen to them Monday, on my drive to work or, at home. But that just takes so much. And I want to talk to you after we go off live, Weezy. I want to know when you're taking a fucking vacation, because the amount of content that you and Brady put out, I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, Joe. And, and Saturday night after the card, because I keep my own database of UFC stats that are all available on my Patreon. I mean, I'm 3 weeks ahead with the matchup stats for every UFC fight. I have all the analytics and statistics. I mean, I should show you guys some of the shit that I have available to me here. So it's all available on my Patreon. You can check that out on patreon.com/Uncle Weezy. Great stats and analytics for serious MMA bettors there. And yeah, we bust our ass, man. Saturday night, I'm putting in stats from that night's card to update my database, and then starting with the research for Sunday's card. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love. We love doing it.
Awesome.
All right, absolutely. And definitely a good note there. Once again, thank you so much, everybody. Good luck on your bets, on your DFS plays, and enjoy the card in general. And we will see you next time.